Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, a really significant issue.
Absolutely. It affects a huge global institution, the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and you sent us this article from the Urban Herald, which lays out what they're calling the global priest shortage. It's quite a picture.
It really is. And it's something that impacts millions of people, how communities practice their faith.
So, our goal here is to unpack what this specific article presents. We'll look at the numbers they provide.
The causes they identify, how the Vatican's responding according to this source.
And maybe where things are heading, all based strictly on the insights from this Urban Herald piece.
Exactly. Think of it as getting the key points from this article quickly and clearly.
Right. It's a big topic, so let's dive in.
Okay, so the current situation. The article immediately sets up this tension.
It does. It starts with the fact that the global Catholic population is still growing, about 1.4 billion in 2023, it estimates. Huge number.
Massive. But then it contrasts that with the number of priests worldwide.
Which actually dips slightly, just a bit, from around 407,730 down to about 406,996 between 2022 and 2023.
A small drop globally, but the article stresses where it's happening most, Europe and the Americas. That's where the decline is really noticeable.
Though it does mention Africa and Asia are, well, bucking the trend a bit. Modest increases there.
Yeah, but the overall trend, particularly in those historically Catholic regions, is down.
And maybe even more telling, the article looks at the pipeline. The seminarians, the guys training to be priests.
Right, and that number's been going down steadily since 2012, according to the source.
Dropped again recently from over 108,000 in 22 to just under 106,523. That's nearly a 2% drop in 1 year.
And again, not evenly spread. The article breaks down. Europe down almost 5%, Asia over 4%, the Americas down 1.3%.
So you put that together, growing population, fewer priests overall, and significantly fewer in training. The picture the article paints is one of, well, growing strength.
Definitely. The core message from these stats in the article is this widening gap. More Catholics, fewer clergy to serve them.
Which naturally leads to the practical side of things. What does this mean on the ground? The article gets into that.
It talks about the priest-to-parishioner ratio getting really stretched.
Yeah, it mentions figures like one priest for every 6,000 Catholics in some areas, and says it's likely to get worse.
And the Amazon example is quite dramatic, potentially one priest per 10,000 Catholics. Just imagine that.
It's hard to wrap your head around, and the article describes the impact. Parish mergers, church closures.
Masses happening less often, priests just stretched incredibly thin, juggling multiple communities, sometimes over huge distances.
And the source does point out that lay people, non-ordained members, are stepping up into leadership roles more and more.
Which is vital, but the article also brings in a quote or a reference to Pope Benedict XVI.
Right, making that distinction, that the unique role of the priest spiritual leader administering sacraments can't be fully replaced by lay ministers.
So while lay people are crucial for running things, providing care, the core sacramental life, the article implies, is under pressure because of the shortage of priests.
It poses real challenges for communities trying to maintain that full spiritual life.
So the obvious question the article tackles is, what's the Vatican doing about this? How are they responding?
Well, the source mentions several things. There are the official appeals, calls for prayer.
Like Pope Francis's message for the World Day of Prayer for Vocations, framing it as a joyful invitation, emphasizing accompanying young people.
And there's a really interesting detail the article includes about the change in leadership.
Oh yeah, the transition. It notes Pope Francis passing in April 2025 and then the election of Pope Leo XIV in May 25.
The first North American pope. And the article positions him as now having the main responsibility for tackling this crisis.
So beyond the sort of standard appeals, the article suggests there's encouragement for creative solutions.
It uses phrases like courageous, daring, and fearless proposals, suggesting they're looking for new ideas at the local level.
And it gives concrete examples of what's being discussed, like ordaining married men of proven virtue, the viri probati.
Specifically mentioned for remote areas, like the Amazon again, where the shortage is most acute. That's been debated for a while, hasn't it?
It has. And the article also touches on formally recognizing new ministries for women, acknowledging the work they're already doing.
And then there's this idea of changing the narrative.
Right, trying to improve the image of the priesthood. The article mentions things like shepherding future shepherds or thankepriest.com.
Efforts to, counter the negative stereotypes and highlight the more positive, even heroic aspects.
So based on this article, The Vatican's approach seems multifaceted. It's prayer and traditional calls.
But also support for current priests, PR efforts, and this cautious openness to some structural shifts, like with the viri probati or lay roles.
Okay, so that's the response. But the article really digs into the why. Why this decline? It lists what it calls the obvious reasons.
Yeah, it breaks it down pretty clearly. First up, just generally declining religious observance, secularization.
Especially in the West and among younger people. Faith just isn't as central for many.
And that connects to broader social and cultural shifts, as the article points out.
Modern values like individualism, personal autonomy, maybe material success, they can clash with the traditional priestly vows.
Celibacy, obedience, simplicity, and just the idea of a lifelong commitment, the article suggests, is viewed differently now.
And the article confronts the impact of the scandals directly.
It does. It says the sex abuse crisis has seriously damaged trust and made the priesthood less appealing, a definite factor, according to the source.
Then there are the lifestyle demands mentioned. Celibacy is one, but also potential isolation, long hours.
The emotional burden, risk of burnout. Plus, the article notes the rising average age of priests, meaning fewer younger colleagues for support. It paints a demanding picture.
Demographics play a role too, according to the source. Lower birth rates in Europe and the Americas mean a smaller pool of potential candidates, just statistically.
Which contrasts with places like Nigeria or the DRC, mentioned in the article, with higher birth rates and more vocations.
Leading to that phenomenon of priests being exported from Africa and Asia to serve elsewhere.
And finally, the article makes the point about alternative options.
Right. Young people who want to serve to make a difference. They have so many avenues now. NGOs, social work, activism.
Yeah, the priesthood isn't the only or maybe even the primary path for that kind of dedicated life anymore, as the article sees it.
So when you look at all those factors presented in the article, society, culture, scandals, lifestyle, demographics, other options, it's clear it's not one single thing.
No, the article definitely presents it as a convergence, a complex mix causing this decline.
So understanding that why, the article then revisits the Vatican's specific strategies to try and boost vocations. More detail on those efforts.
Right. It talks about active vocation promotion, things like prayer campaigns, the Pope's monthly intentions, the World Day of Prayer, really trying to foster a culture of vocation.
Making it something families and communities think about and encourage.
Then there's formation and support. The article mentions putting more emphasis on quality seminary training.
And providing better ongoing support for priests already serving. Recognizing that keeping priests healthy and supported is crucial.
Makes sense. You need to support the ones you have.
Absolutely. And then that positive storytelling angle comes up again.
Using examples like thankapriest.com to actively try and, well, reshape the public image, share the good stories.
Counter the negativity. And then there's the practical side. International collaboration.
Yeah, formal partnerships between dioceses, bringing priests from places like Africa and Asia to Europe and North America where the need is greater. The article highlights this.
And lastly, it loops back to lay involvement, presenting the increasing role of lay people, not just as a stopgap, but maybe as a deliberate strategy too, empowering the wider church.
So lots of different approaches being tried, according to the source.
It seems the international priests and the expanded lay roles are perhaps the most immediate, practical responses the article points to for managing the day-to-day realities.
Okay, so where does this leave things? What about the future? The article explores potential adaptations.
It revisits expanding the role of deacons and lay ministers. Permanent deacons, who are often married men, their numbers are rising. They can do a lot, just not celebrate Mass or hear confessions.
Helps take some pressure off priests, presumably. And parish mergers and reorganization are mentioned as likely to continue, just a practical reality.
Consolidating resources where clergy are scarce.
And the article touches again on exploring new models. It's clear it says ordination of women is off the table.
But it reiterates that openness to new ministries for women and that possibility of ordaining married men, the viri probati, in very specific, exceptional situations.
International priest exchanges are expected to continue, though the article does sort of hint there might be challenges there too. Integration, long-term sustainability.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a simple fix.
And throughout this look ahead, the article keeps stressing the growing importance of lay involvement. It's key to keeping parishes alive.
But it always comes back to that distinction, doesn't it? It's the unique sacramental role of the ordained priest. That core element remains.
Still, despite all the challenges, the article doesn't end on a completely bleak note. It talks about resilience.
An enduring need for spiritual leadership. It frames the priesthood, even with its difficulties, as still being a path of meaning, service, hope.
And it includes that quote from Pope Francis, which is quite powerful.
Yeah, that every vocation lay, ordained, consecrated is a sign of God's hope. It suggests the Church is trying to navigate this by balancing tradition with adaptation.
So wrapping up our deep dive into this Urban Herald article, we've seen the numbers showing the shortage, especially with seminarians. That's clear.
We've unpacked the complex web of reasons the article identifies: societal changes, scandals, lifestyle demands, demographics.
We've looked at the Vatican's response, as described in the source, from prayers and PR to potential structural tweaks and relying more on lay members and international priests.
The article definitely portrays it as a serious, ongoing challenge, but, like you said, not without some sense of underlying purpose.
Absolutely. And the article leaves us with that final thought right from its closing lines for you to consider.
The future of the Catholic priesthood is uncertain, but it's far from over. The call, as ever, is out there. The question is, who will answer?
Powerful question to end on.
It really frames the challenge and the continuous need for people dedicated to service within that structure.
Definitely gives you a lot to think about. Thanks again for sending us the source material for this exploration.
Yeah, we hope this walkthrough of the Urban Herald article provided some clarity on this really complex issue.
Keep the questions coming and keep exploring these important topics.